My name is Jack Turner. This happened to me in October 2021. At that time I was 26 years old and had recently moved to Raven Creek, Oregon. Raven Creek was a small town surrounded by dense forests. The place was peaceful and beautiful during the day. But after sunset the streets became almost empty. People there had a strange habit. No matter what they were doing, everyone made sure to be inside their homes before midnight. At first I thought it was just a small town thing. One evening I was having coffee at a local diner when I noticed an old man staring at me. After a few minutes he walked over to my table. He looked nervous. Then he asked me a strange question. He said, "You live alone near Pine Hollow Road, right?" I said yes. The old man became quiet for a moment. Then he leaned closer and said, "If you ever hear someone knocking on your window after midnight, do not look outside." I laughed and asked him why. But he did not laugh back. He simply stood up and left. That night I could not stop thinking about what he said. Around 12:40 am I was sitting in my living room watching videos on my phone. Everything was quiet. Then I heard it. Knock, knock, knock. The sound came from the window behind me. At first I thought it was a tree branch. Then it happened again. Knock, knock, knock. This time it was louder. Slowly I turned my head toward the window. And that is when I realized something terrifying. There were no trees anywhere near that window. For a few seconds I just sat there staring at the window. My heart was beating so fast that I could hear it. The knocking stopped. Everything became silent again. I tried to convince myself that it was probably an animal. Maybe a bird. Maybe something hit the glass. But deep down I knew something was wrong. I grabbed my phone and walked toward the window. The curtains were closed. I was only a few steps away when the knocking came again. This time it was much harder. Knock, knock, knock. The entire glass shook. I froze. The old man's warning suddenly came back into my mind. Do not look outside. I stepped back. A few minutes passed. Then the knocking stopped completely. I stayed awake for almost the entire night. Nothing else happened. The next morning I went outside to check around the house. At first everything looked normal. Then I noticed something near the window. There were footprints in the mud. I crouched down and looked closer. The footprints were strange. They looked almost human, but they were far too long. And the distance between each step was impossible, as if whoever made them had taken giant strides across the yard. I took a picture with my phone. Then I followed the tracks. They led toward the forest behind my house. After about 10 minutes of walking, I reached a small clearing. That was when I saw something hanging from a tree branch. It was an old wooden sign. The words were faded but still readable. It said, "Do not whistle in the forest after midnight." I stared at the sign in confusion. Then I heard a whistle. A long, slow whistle, coming from somewhere deep in the woods. And it sounded very close. Much closer than it should have been, even though there was nobody there. The whistle echoed through the trees. I looked around but could not see anyone. The forest was completely still. No birds, no animals, nothing. For a moment I thought someone was playing a prank on me. Then the whistle came again, this time from a different direction. My stomach dropped. Whoever was making that sound had somehow moved without making a single noise. I decided to leave. As I turned around I noticed something on the ground near the tree. It was a photograph, old and dirty. The edges were torn. I picked it up and wiped away the mud. There were 4 people standing in front of the same forest. The picture looked decades old. 3 faces were visible. The 4th face had been scratched out completely. Someone had gone out of their way to destroy it. On the back of the photo were 4 words, "He still walks here." A cold feeling ran through my body. I put the photo in my pocket and hurried back home. That evening I went to the local diner again. The old man was sitting alone in the corner. When I showed him the photograph, his face lost all color. He immediately stood up and pulled me outside. Then he asked, "Where did you find this?" I told him about the clearing and the whistle. For several seconds he said nothing. Then he looked toward the forest and whispered. It started again. I asked him what he meant. The old man took a deep breath. Then he told me something that made my blood run cold. 30 years earlier several people had disappeared around Raven Creek. Most were never found. The few who survived all told the same story. They heard a whistle in the forest. And after that they started hearing their own voice calling their name at night. I laughed nervously and said that sounded impossible. The old man did not smile. Instead, he asked me another question. "Jack, has anything called your name yet?" I opened my mouth to answer. Then my phone rang. The screen showed an unknown number. I answered. For a few seconds there was only silence. Then I heard a voice that sounded exactly like mine. And it said, "Jack, I found your window." The moment I heard those words I ended the call. My hands were shaking. The old man noticed the fear on my face. He asked what happened. When I told him about the voice he immediately looked away. as if he already knew what I was talking about. Then he said something I will never forget. If it sounds like you, then do not answer it. Do not follow it. And whatever happens, do not let it inside. I asked him what it was, but before he could answer, another customer entered the diner. The old man suddenly became quiet. He refused to say another word. That night I drove home before sunset. For the first time since moving to Raven Creek, I locked every door and every window. Around 11 p.m. I checked the house again. Everything was secure. Midnight came. Then 1 a.m. Nothing happened. I started thinking maybe the old man was wrong. Maybe someone was just messing with me. Then my bedroom light went out. The entire house became dark. At first I thought the power had failed, but when I looked outside, I could see lights glowing in other houses. Only my house had gone dark. My phone flashlight was the only light I had. I grabbed it and slowly walked into the hallway. The house was completely silent. Then I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, heavy, deliberate. Step, step, step. My blood turned cold. There was no one else in the house. The footsteps stopped directly above me. For several seconds everything was quiet. Then I heard a voice, my voice, coming from the second floor. Jack, come upstairs. I stood frozen. The voice spoke again. Jack, I found something. You need to see this. Every instinct told me to run. But before I could move, I noticed something terrifying. The voice was not coming from upstairs anymore. It was coming from directly behind me. Every muscle in my body locked up. I could feel someone standing behind me, close enough to touch me, but I was too afraid to turn around. The flashlight in my hand was shaking. The voice spoke again, softly, almost like a whisper. Jack, look at me. I squeezed my eyes shut. The old man's warning echoed in my head. Do not answer it. Do not follow it. Do not let it inside. Then I realized something horrifying. The voice sounded closer than before because it was no longer outside. It was already in the house. A sudden crash came from the kitchen. The sound broke my fear. I ran. I rushed straight for the front door and threw it open. Cold night air hit my face. I didn't stop. I ran across the yard and got into my truck. The engine started immediately. Within seconds I was speeding down the road toward town. When I finally reached the diner parking lot, my hands were still shaking. The place was closed. Only one light was on. The old man's truck was parked outside. I knocked on the door until he opened it. The moment he saw my face, he knew something had happened. I told him everything. The footsteps, the voice, the darkness, all of it. The old man listened quietly. Then he walked to a dusty shelf and pulled out an old newspaper. The paper was yellow with age. On the front page was a headline. Local hunter found dead in Pine Hollow Forest. Under the headline was a photograph. The second I saw it, my stomach dropped. It was the same photograph I had found in the woods. The one with 4 people standing together. The same one with the scratched out face. I looked at the article. The date was October 1991. Exactly 30 years before I moved to Raven Creek. Then I noticed something else. One of the people in the photograph was the old man standing beside me. I looked up at him. His face had gone pale. Then he pointed at the scratched out figure and quietly said, "That man was my brother. He disappeared in those woods." 3 days later something came back pretending to be him. And that was the night our family learned the truth. Whatever is in that forest, it can wear a human face. And now, it has chosen yours. For a moment I could not speak. I stared at the photograph, then back at the old man. My mind refused to believe what I was hearing. I asked him what happened to his brother. The old man sat down slowly. His hands were trembling. Then he began telling me the story. Back in 1991, his brother and 3 friends went into Pine Hollow Forest after hearing stories about strange whistles at night. They planned to prove the legends were fake. Only 3 of them returned. His brother never came back. For 3 days the town searched the forest. Nobody found him. Then on the 4th night someone knocked on their front door. It was his brother. At least that was what it looked like. The same face, the same voice, the same clothes. But something felt wrong. His mother noticed it first. He knew things only her son should know. Yet he behaved like a stranger trying to act human. Then strange things started happening. Family photographs disappeared. Pets went missing. People heard footsteps outside their windows every night. And whenever someone looked outside, they saw him standing there, watching, smiling. The old man lowered his head. Then he whispered. 1 week later my father followed him into the forest. Neither of them ever came back. Silence filled the room. I felt sick. Then suddenly a loud bang hit the diner's front window. Both of us jumped. Bang, bang, bang. Someone was outside. The old man slowly looked toward the glass. The color drained from his face. I turned around, and my heart nearly stopped. A man was standing across the street, watching us. Even from that distance I could tell something was wrong, because the man looked exactly like me. Same height, Same face, same clothes. It was standing perfectly still, with a smile stretching across its face. Then it slowly raised one hand and pointed toward the forest, as if it wanted me to follow it. A second later, every light inside the diner went out, and in the darkness, I heard a whistle coming from right behind us. The whistle echoed through the dark diner. Neither of us moved, neither of us breathed. For several seconds, the only sound was that slow haunting whistle. Then the emergency lights flickered on. The diner was covered in a dim red glow. I immediately turned around. There was nobody behind us. The whistle had stopped. The old man grabbed my arm. His face looked terrified. He pointed toward the street. The thing that looked like me was gone. Not walking away. Not running. Gone. As if it had never been there. Then we heard sirens. Several police cars rushed past the diner toward Pine Hollow Forest. Something had happened. The old man and I followed them. Within minutes we reached the forest entrance. A crowd had already gathered. People were whispering. Some were crying. Others looked too frightened to speak. I pushed through the crowd. Then I saw why. A teenage boy had disappeared. Only his backpack had been found, lying beside a tree. Near the backpack was something else. Fresh footprints. The same impossible footprints I had seen outside my house. One of the officers noticed me staring. He asked if I recognized them. Before I could answer, the old man stepped forward. He looked at the footprints. Then his face became pale, because beside them was something that had not been there before. Words, scratched into the dirt, as if someone had carved them using their fingers. Everyone moved closer. The message contained only 4 words. Jack is coming home. The crowd became silent. Every eye turned toward me. A cold feeling spread through my chest. I had never written that. I had never even been there before. Yet somehow whatever was in that forest already knew my name. Then one of the officers suddenly shouted. People rushed toward the tree line. A searchlight swept across the woods. For a brief second the beam landed on a figure standing between the trees. It looked exactly like me, but this time it was not alone. Dozens of dark figures were standing behind it, watching, waiting, and then all of them stepped deeper into the forest together. Nobody in the crowd said a word. The officers immediately ran into the forest. Searchlights moved through the trees. Dogs were brought in. But after nearly an hour there was no sign of the missing boy, and no sign of the figures. It was as if they had vanished. The old man pulled me aside. His voice was shaking. He said we were running out of time. I asked him what he meant. He looked straight into my eyes. Then he said, "It has marked you." The message in the dirt was not a threat. It was a warning. I felt a chill run through my body. The old man explained that according to the oldest stories of Raven Creek, the thing in the forest only copied people for one reason. It was preparing to replace them. First it learned your voice, then your habits, then your memories, and when it knew enough, the real person disappeared. I wanted to tell him this was impossible, but after everything I had seen, I could not. The next day I decided to leave Raven Creek. I packed my truck before sunset. I did not care where I went. I just wanted to get as far away as possible. Around 8 p.m. I started driving. The highway stretched through miles of empty forest. For the first hour everything seemed normal. Then my phone rang. A known number. I ignored it. A few seconds later it rang again. Then again. Then again. Eventually I turned the phone off. 20 minutes later I noticed headlights behind me. A black pickup truck. At first I thought nothing of it, but the truck stayed the same distance behind me for miles. No matter how fast I drove, no matter how slow I drove, it never changed position. Around midnight I stopped at a gas station. The black truck stopped too. I got out. The driver never did. The windows were completely dark. I could not see inside. Something felt wrong. Very wrong. I paid for gas and hurried back to my truck. As I started the engine, the black pickup slowly pulled away. Relieved, I watched it leave. Then my blood turned cold, because as it passed under a streetlight, I saw the driver. It was me, and sitting in the passenger seat was the missing boy from Raven Creek, staring directly at me, with a terrified look on his face. For a second I forgot how to breathe. The black pickup disappeared onto the highway. I jumped into my truck and followed it. Every part of me knew this was a bad idea, but if that really was the missing boy, I could not just drive away. The road was empty. The black pickup stayed about half a mile ahead, its taillights glowing in the darkness. I pressed harder on the gas. The distance slowly closed. Then something strange happened. The truck turned onto an old road that was not on my GPS. A narrow road leading into the forest. I almost missed the turn. The road looked abandoned. Trees crowded both sides. Branches scraped against my truck. After 10 minutes I saw the black pickup parked ahead. Its lights were off. The engine was silent. I stopped about 50 feet away. The driver's door was open. Nobody was inside. The missing boy was gone too. I grabbed a flashlight and stepped out. The air felt colder than it should have. Then I noticed footprints, hundreds of them, leading deeper into the woods. Some looked human, some did not. My flashlight followed the trail. And then I saw something that made my stomach twist. There was an entire clearing hidden among the trees. In the middle stood dozens of people, completely still, not talking, not moving, just standing. Every single one looked terrified, as if they had been frozen in place. Among them was the missing boy. I wanted to run to him, but before I could move, one of the figures slowly turned toward me. Then another, then another. My blood ran cold, because none of them were real people. They all had the faces of missing residents from Raven Creek, people who had vanished over the last 30 years. And standing in the center of them all was the thing wearing my face. It smiled, then pointed behind me. I slowly turned around and nearly dropped the flashlight. A massive wooden structure stood in the darkness, hidden deep in the forest. It looked ancient, older than anything I had ever seen, and carved across the entrance were 4 words. "This is where they stay." My legs felt weak. I wanted to run, but I could not take my eyes off the structure. It was enormous. Built from dark weathered wood, the walls were covered with strange carvings. None of them looked familiar. The thing wearing my face slowly walked toward the entrance. Then it stopped, almost as if it wanted me to follow. The missing boy was still standing among the others. His eyes were full of fear. He opened his mouth, as if trying to say something, but no sound came out. Then all the figures suddenly turned toward the structure at the same time. The movement was unnatural, like puppets being controlled by invisible strings. A deep feeling of dread settled over me. Something inside that building was controlling all of this. Then I heard footsteps behind me. I spun around. The old man was there, breathing heavily, holding a shotgun. I had no idea how he found me, but he looked more frightened than I had ever seen him. He grabbed my arm and said, "We need to leave right now, before it wakes up." I asked what was inside. The old man stared at the structure, then whispered, "My brother went inside 30 years ago. He never came back out." Before I could ask another question, a loud sound echoed from within the building. A long wooden creak, like a giant door opening. Every figure in the clearing suddenly dropped to their knees, including the thing wearing my face. The forest became silent. No wind, no insects, nothing. Then a voice came from inside the structure. A voice so deep and unnatural that it did not sound human. Yet somehow I understood every word. It said, "Jack Turner, you finally came back." The old man's face went white, because I had never told anyone my full name. Not him, not anyone in Raven Creek. And then, something huge began moving inside the darkness beyond the doorway. The ground beneath my feet started to vibrate, slowly, rhythmically, as if something enormous was taking steps inside the structure. The old man grabbed my jacket. He was almost dragging me backward, but I could not move. I was staring at the doorway. The darkness inside looked wrong. It was not normal darkness. It seemed alive, like it was shifting and breathing. Then a shape appeared. At first I thought it was a person. Then it stood taller, and taller, and taller, until its head nearly touched the top of the entrance. My flashlight flickered. The beam hit its face for less than a second. That was enough. I wish I had never seen it. The thing had no eyes, no nose, no human features, only a smooth pale face, and a wide smiling mouth stretching from one side to the other. The figures kneeling in the clearing lowered their heads, as if worshipping it. Then the creature spoke again. "Jack, come home." The voice echoed through the forest, not from its mouth, but from everywhere around us. The trees, the ground, the air itself. I finally stepped back, and that was when the creature smiled wider, as if it enjoyed seeing my fear. The old man suddenly raised his shotgun and fired. The blast shattered the silence. The creature did not move. It did not react. It simply stood there, watching us. Then every figure in the clearing slowly rose to their feet, dozens of them, all at once, including the thing wearing my face, and they started walking toward us. The old man yelled for me to run. This time I listened. We ran through the forest as fast as we could. Branches cut our arms. Roots nearly tripped us, but we did not stop. Behind us came hundreds of footsteps, not running, just walking, steadily, patiently, as if they already knew we could not escape. Then I looked back, and my blood turned cold, because the thing wearing my face was no longer chasing us. It was standing still, watching, smiling, holding something in its hand, something that belonged to me. My driver's license, which was locked inside my wallet, inside my truck, miles away, and somehow, it was holding it. The moment I saw my driver's license in its hand, I stopped breathing. There was no way it could have it. My wallet was inside my truck. I had checked it before leaving. Yet there it was, holding it like a trophy. The old man pulled me forward. We kept running. The footsteps behind us never got closer, but they never got farther away either. It was as if the entire forest was following us. After what felt like forever, we finally reached the trucks. I jumped inside. The old man got into his. We sped out of the forest without looking back. For the first time all night, the footsteps disappeared. Neither of us spoke during the drive. When we reached town, the old man told me to stay inside my house until sunrise. Then he drove away. I locked every door, every window, every possible entrance. Then I sat in the living room with a flashlight and a kitchen knife, waiting for morning. Around 3 a.m., I heard a car pull into my driveway. I looked through the curtain and felt my stomach drop. It was my truck, the same truck I had driven into the forest, but I was already home. The truck slowly rolled to a stop. The driver's door opened, and someone stepped out. It was me. Not similar, not close, exactly me. Same face, same clothes, same scar near my left eyebrow. Everything. The copy walked to my front door. Then it knocked. 3 slow knocks. I stayed completely silent. The copy smiled, then spoke through the door. Jack, open the door. You are in my house. A chill ran through my entire body, because the voice sounded annoyed, almost offended, as if it truly believed I was the fake one. Then my phone vibrated. An unknown number. With shaking hands, I answered. The old man's voice came through, but he sounded terrified. Jack, do not open that door. It is already too late. I asked what he meant. For several seconds there was silence. Then he said something that changed everything. Jack, the real question is, how do you know you are the original one? The words hit me like a punch to the chest. How do you know you are the original one? I wanted to tell him he was crazy. I wanted to laugh, but I couldn't, because deep down a terrible thought had already entered my mind. What if he was right? Outside, the knocking stopped. The copy was no longer speaking. The entire house became silent. I slowly looked through the curtain again. The driveway was empty. The truck was gone. The copy was gone. Nothing was there. My phone was still against my ear. I asked the old man what he meant. His voice sounded broken. Then he told me something he had never told anyone. 30 years ago, when his brother disappeared, the thing returned wearing his face. But after a few days his family began noticing strange memories. Different memories. His mother remembered one childhood story. His father remembered another. His sister remembered something completely different. Each person was certain they were right. The old man swallowed hard, then said, that was when we realized something horrifying. The creature did not just copy people. It changed memories. It made everyone doubt what was real. I felt sick. Then he asked me a question. Jack, tell me the name of your first dog. I immediately answered, Rusty. The old man became quiet. Then he whispered, that's impossible. My stomach tightened. I asked why. His reply nearly stopped my heart, because yesterday when I asked you the same question, you said Bailey. The room felt like it was spinning. I clearly remembered having a dog named Rusty. The memory felt real, yet I also had a strange feeling. A faint memory of a dog named Bailey. Suddenly I wasn't sure anymore. My hands began shaking. The old man spoke again. Jack, I think it has already started. Before I could answer, every light in the house turned off. The call disconnected, and from somewhere inside my home, a familiar voice whispered, don't listen to him. He's trying to replace you. The voice was my own. And this time, it was coming from upstairs. I stood frozen in the darkness. My phone screen was the only light left. The voice upstairs laughed softly. A laugh that sounded exactly like mine. Then it spoke again. Jack, you already know the truth. My heart was pounding so hard it hurt. I wanted to leave the house. I wanted to get in my truck and drive until sunrise. But a terrible question kept repeating in my head. What if I was not the real Jack? The voice upstairs continued. Think about it. How many memories have changed? How many details do you no longer remember? I covered my ears, but it was useless. The voice sounded like it was inside my head. Then I noticed something strange. My wallet was sitting on the table. I slowly picked it up. My driver's license was inside, exactly where it should be. I stared at it. Part of me was relieved, but another part felt worse. If my license was here, then what had the thing been holding in the forest? Suddenly I heard footsteps upstairs. Slow, heavy, coming toward the staircase. Step, step, step. The voice stopped talking. Now there was only the sound of footsteps. Getting closer. I backed toward the front door. Then the staircase came into view. A figure appeared at the top. My flashlight shook as I pointed it upward. The figure looked exactly like me, but something was different. Very different. Its eyes were filled with fear. Not malice. Not anger. Fear. Then it shouted, run, before it finds you. The moment those words left its mouth, a second figure stepped out behind it. And this one was much taller. Its body twisted unnaturally. Its face was smooth and pale, and its smile stretched impossibly wide. The same creature from the structure, except now, it was inside my house. The creature stood at the top of the stairs. Its pale face almost touched the ceiling. That impossible smile stretched wider and wider. I could not move. I could not breathe. The copy of me standing in front of it looked terrified. Then something unexpected happened. The copy grabbed the railing and screamed, "Run, Jack, now!" The creature's smile disappeared. For the first time it looked angry. A long arm shot forward and grabbed the copy by the neck. The sound that followed did not sound human. The copy struggled desperately. Then it looked directly at me. Its eyes were filled with panic and sadness. Then it shouted one final sentence. "I am the real Jack." The creature slammed it against the wall. The entire house shook. I stumbled backward toward the front door. My mind was breaking. If that was the real Jack, then who was I? The creature slowly turned its head toward me and smiled again, as if it knew exactly what I was thinking. Then it spoke, not with a voice, but directly inside my mind. "You finally understand. The memories, the missing pieces, the confusion, none of it was an accident." I felt dizzy. Images started flashing through my head. A dark forest, a whistle, a cold night, and something else. Something I had completely forgotten. I remembered standing inside that wooden structure. Not tonight, not recently. Years ago, when I was a child, my blood ran cold, because I had never lived in Raven Creek as a child. I had moved there only a few months ago. At least, that is what I remembered. The creature took another step toward me, then another, and suddenly a horrifying possibility entered my mind. What if I had never moved to Raven Creek? What if I had actually come back? The creature smiled wider, as if it had heard every thought in my head. Then it whispered, "Welcome home, Jack." And suddenly, every memory I had ever trusted began falling apart. My knees nearly gave out. Memories flooded into my head faster than I could process them. Some felt familiar, others felt completely foreign, yet all of them felt real. I saw myself as a child running through Pine Hollow Forest. I saw the old wooden structure. I saw dozens of people standing around it. And I saw someone holding my hand. A woman, my mother. Then the memory shattered. Another one appeared. This time I was older, maybe 10 years old. I was standing near the structure again. Someone was calling my name from inside. A deep voice, the same voice I had heard that night. Then everything went black. I grabbed my head and screamed. The pain was unbearable. The creature continued walking down the stairs, slowly, patiently, as if it knew there was nowhere for me to go. Then I heard a gunshot. The front window exploded inward. The creature stopped. The old man rushed into the house holding his shotgun. Without hesitation he fired again. The blast struck the creature. This time it reacted. It took a step back, not hurt, but surprised. The old man shouted, "Jack, do not listen to it. It wants you confused. It wants you to stop fighting." The creature's smile returned. Then it looked directly at the old man. For the first time its voice sounded angry. "Your family should have joined us long ago." The room suddenly became freezing cold. The lights started flickering. The walls vibrated, and the creature took another step forward, then another. The old man lowered his shotgun, his face filled with horror. I followed his gaze, and my blood ran cold. The creature was no longer alone. Dozens of pale smiling faces were now appearing behind it, emerging from the darkness upstairs. Every missing person from Raven Creek, every victim, every face from the forest. And standing among them was the old man's brother, still wearing the same clothes from 30 years ago, still smiling. Then he pointed at me and said, "He remembers." The creature's smile widened, because whatever memory was buried inside me, it was finally starting to return. The room fell silent. Every pale face upstairs was staring at me, waiting, watching. The old man's brother stepped forward. His smile never moved. Then he spoke. Jack was the only one who escaped. My heart stopped. The old man looked at me in shock. I could barely breathe. Memories kept crashing into my mind, fragments becoming clearer. I remembered the forest. I remembered the structure. I remembered being a child. And then I remembered the night everything happened. 30 years ago, a group of people had entered the structure. Among them was the old man's brother, my parents, and me. I had not moved to Raven Creek a few months ago. I had been born there, raised there, and taken there. Something had happened inside that building. Something terrible. The creature stepped closer, its smile gone. Now it looked serious, almost curious, as if it wanted to know what I would do next. Then the final memory returned. I saw my mother pushing me through a hidden opening in the floor. I heard her screaming. I heard people running. And I heard her final words, "Never come back. Run." Then darkness. Tears filled my eyes. For 30 years I had forgotten everything. Someone had erased those memories, or hidden them. The creature looked directly at me. Then it spoke. Your mother stole you from us. You belong here. The old man raised his shotgun again, but before he could fire, the creature lifted one finger. The shotgun flew across the room. As if hit by an invisible force, the old man crashed into a wall. Unconscious, I was alone. The creature stopped only a few feet away. The smiling faces behind it watched silently. Then the creature stretched out its hand. Join us. And for a brief moment, I felt something pulling me toward it. A strange feeling, like I was being called home. Then I remembered my mother's voice. Never come back. Run. The pull vanished. The creature's expression changed. For the first time, it looked disappointed, then angry, very angry, and the entire house began to shake. The walls cracked around me. Windows shattered. Every smiling figure in the house turned toward the creature, as if they were waiting for an order. The air felt heavy, almost impossible to breathe. The creature took one final step toward me, its pale face twisted with anger. Then it spoke. You were never supposed to remember. At that moment I understood everything. My mother had not simply saved me. She had hidden me. Somehow she had buried my memories so deeply that the creature could never find me again. For 30 years it had been waiting, watching, searching, and when I returned to Raven Creek, it finally found me. The creature reached for me, but I did not move. Instead I looked directly at it, and said, "Number." The smile disappeared completely. For the first time, it looked afraid. Then something happened. All the smiling figures behind it began to change. Their expressions faded. The missing people, the victims, it was as if they were waking from a nightmare. The old man's brother took a step forward, then another. His smile vanished. Tears appeared in his eyes. The creature turned toward them, suddenly nervous, suddenly desperate. Then every victim in the room looked at the creature, not me. The creature, as if its control was breaking. A loud scream shook the house. The sound was so powerful that every light exploded. The floor beneath the creature cracked open. Dark shadows burst from the ground and wrapped around its body. The creature fought, screamed, pulled itself free, but the shadows dragged it backward, toward a darkness that seemed deeper than night itself. One by one the victims disappeared with it, including the old man's brother. Before vanishing, he looked at me and smiled, a real smile this time. Then he was gone. The house became silent. The shaking stopped. The cold vanished. Everything was over. Hours later the police arrived, but they found nothing. No creature, no victims, no evidence, only a damaged house. And to survivors, me, and the old man. The next morning I left Raven Creek forever. I never returned. The forest was eventually closed to the public, and the old wooden structure was never found again. At least that is what the authorities claimed. 3 years later, I received a package with no return address. Inside was an old photograph, the same one from the forest, the one with 4 people standing together. But this time, the scratched out face was visible. It was not the old man's brother. It was me. And written on the back were 5 words. We are still waiting, Jack. So this is the story. I hope you enjoyed it. For more terrifying stories like this, follow Nightmare Files.